My roommate in India poisoned me because I used his eyeliner. I never thought a black line on my eyelid could mark the beginning of my downfall. My name is Isabel. I'm 26 years old. I'm from Argentina, and almost 8 months ago, I traveled to India to participate in a fashion design exchange program. We had workshops with textile artisans in Jaipur, and we lived in a shared house with other students. I had never been so far from home. I had never felt so much heat in every sense: the heat of the land, the curious stares, and the tension that grew day by day with my roommate, Ravi. Ravi wasn't an easy person. At first, I thought he was just reserved, quiet, neat, obsessed with order. We shared a room because the university assigned it that way, and he insisted on putting tape on the floor to divide the space in two. The first night he told me, without looking at me, "My side, your side. Please don't cross." I laughed. I thought it was some kind of cultural joke. It wasn't. He had a shelf for his personal things, everything meticulously aligned: combs, creams, teas, contact lenses, 3 identical pairs of sandals, and a metal box with makeup. I was surprised. I never asked him about it, but I found it beautiful. He had an elegant style, the kind built with pain. I realized that later. He wore eyeliner proudly, without fear. He applied it with surgical precision before going out, even if it was just to the corner shop. One day, in the middle of the 3rd month, I lost my toiletry bag. I dropped it on the street. I noticed just before leaving for a meeting. I had to present a design to a panel in Delhi. I was desperate. I looked in the mirror. No time for anything. I saw his box. I hesitated, but only for a second. I opened it, grabbed the black eyeliner, applied it, and put it back exactly where it was. That night, when I returned, he said, "Did you use my eyeliner?" "Yes," I answered, without thinking. "I lost mine."
"I'm sorry."
I took care of it. His face didn't change, but something faded from his eyes. He didn't yell. He didn't lecture me. He just nodded and went back to reading his book. I felt like I had stepped into a sacred place without permission. The next day, we had breakfast together. He served me jasmine tea and a sweet bread with cardamom. He told me he had baked it himself, that I looked calmer, more in tune with the house. That night, the vomiting started. For the first 24 hours, I thought it was gastroenteritis. I had eaten out, maybe something spoiled. My stomach hurt in a way I'd never experienced, like I was being scraped from the inside. I went to the bathroom over 10 times. I woke up drenched in sweat. I didn't want to worry anyone. I drank electrolytes, lay down. Ravi brought me hot water with herbs.
"It will help," he said.
The fever started on the 3rd day. And with it, the delirium. I saw shadows in the corners. I felt the room spinning. My legs barely moved. Ravi said it was normal, that in India you must learn to let the toxins out, that I was cleansing my energy. He took care of me, held my head, wiped my forehead with cold towels, gave me spoonfuls of a dark green syrup he claimed to have prepared himself. He told me, "This is what my grandmother used to do when I was sick." I trusted him. I was so weak I clung to his hands, as if they were those of a brother. One night, while he slept, I dragged my body to the common room. A German guy who shared the kitchen with us saw me and got scared. He called emergency services. They took me to the nearest private hospital. They admitted me immediately. I was dehydrated, poisoned, my kidneys inflamed. "Did you eat something strange?" the doctor asked. "Tea and bread." I've been unwell ever since. They ran tests. The words "traces of mercury" appeared on a printout. The doctor looked at me with a mix of pity and anger. "Who gave you this?" I didn't know what to say. How could I accuse someone who had cared for me? Who gave me tea, wiped my forehead? I felt like an idiot. I felt alone. I was hospitalized for a week. When I returned to the apartment, Ravi was gone. The metal box was gone too. His side of the room was empty. They told me he left without notice. The administration didn't know where he went. He only left a note, folded between my sheets: "You don't cross a line just because you're in a rush. I helped you clean it all." There was nothing else. Since then, I've had a constant tingling in my tongue. The aftereffects are real. Sometimes I tremble for no reason. My kidneys still haven't fully recovered. I have weekly medical checkups. They recommended I return to Argentina, but I refused, because what they don't know is that note wasn't the first. I found others. In my clothes. In my notebook. On the back of a label. Small phrases, in his handwriting. "Do you like symmetry? Every line you steal has a price. Who are you before my box?" Now I know it wasn't just about the eyeliner. It was a test, and I'm starting to believe I wasn't the first. After finding the note among my sheets, the world began to feel different. Not just because of the accumulated exhaustion or the intermittent tremors that still shook me at night, but because everything, absolutely everything, felt infused with him. As if every object he had touched was cursed or possessed. As if the eyeliner had been an invisible threshold to something darker. I tried not to overthink it. I wanted to get back to my routine, to my classes, to my work, to the suffocating heat of the streets where tuk-tuks honked endlessly. But something inside me wasn't right. I felt like part of my body no longer followed the same logic as before. I couldn't tell if it was paranoia or intuition. Maybe both. The truth is, Ravi was no longer here, but he never really left. The empty room was an uncomfortable void. On the shelf where his things used to be, only dust remained, marked with sharp lines, like an absent silhouette. Every night, when I turned off the light, I felt like I could hear him moving on the other bed. My brain insisted on projecting him there, sitting, silently staring at me like that first night. A week after being discharged from the hospital, I returned to the institute. The program coordinator, Anjali, greeted me with a mix of concern and guilt. "You should have said something sooner," she said, pouring overly sweet tea. "I didn't know what was happening," I answered, my voice dull. "I thought it was my fault, that I got sick from eating street food." She frowned and looked down. "And now, what do you think?" I didn't know how to answer. Because the worst part wasn't thinking Ravi had done it on purpose. The worst part was that, deep down, part of me still wanted it not to be true. Because admitting it meant accepting that he had violated me with full awareness, while smiling, while caring for me, while offering soft words like sharp knives. Anjali took a long breath and said something that pierced me. "You're not the first person to report strange behavior from him. But nothing this serious. We never had proof. Never something so physical. You knew he was unstable? We knew he was demanding, controlling. But in design, that's more a virtue than a flaw." I felt like a defective piece in a cynical machine. "And now what will you do?" "Nothing," she said flatly. "He's gone. Vanished. And you're alive." That night I returned to my room with more questions than answers. I couldn't sleep, so I grabbed my laptop, opened a folder with photos of my design process, and started looking. I was searching for inspiration to get back on track. But I found something else. An old photo. A selfie I took without thinking, one of those mornings when I was in a good mood. I was in front of the mirror, my face made up, and in the background, blurred, his bed. And on his bed, his red notebook. That wasn't what caught my attention. It was what was inside the notebook. It was slightly open, and zooming in I noticed scribbles. Drawings. Lines. I printed it, cut it out, taped it to the wall. It was a pattern. Like a web of symbols connected by arrows. Arrows pointing to words in English, Hindi, and Latin. I stared at it for hours, like a puzzle. It made no sense. Or maybe it did, but only to him. The next morning, I went straight to talk to Max, the German guy who found me crawling on the floor weeks ago. "Do you have a minute?" He was drinking coffee in the courtyard, near the basil plants. "Always," he said, taking off his headphones. "How are you?" "Better." "Do you remember Ravi?" I saw him tense up. His eyes made that expression people make when they want to seem casual, but can't hide the twitch. "What happened?" "I found something. I want to show you." I went to my room, showed him the enlarged photo on the wall. Max observed it for a few minutes, silently. "This looks like, I don't know, something between a mind map and a ritual." "Ritual? Look. This is Sanskrit. Here it says purification by contact. And this is ancient Latin. It means the price of form." "Do you think he had some kind of obsession?" Max shrugged. "I remember once he asked me if I believed the human face had sacred geometry. I thought it was a weird question. But he talked like that." "What else do you know about him?" Max hesitated. Then he said, "I saw something. I didn't want to tell you when you were in the hospital. One night, while you were sleeping, he asked to borrow a bowl. He said it was to make a facial mask. But when I came down for water, I saw him in the kitchen cutting a white pill and mixing it with honey." "A pill?"
Yes.
"It had a label in Hindi, but I didn't recognize it. Then I saw him leave the mixture in the tea jar. I assumed it was for him." My body froze. My mouth tasted like rust. "Did that jar have a green lid?" "Yes." I went speechless. It was the same tea he gave me. The same one. I didn't sleep that night. I searched everything. Boxes, papers, labels, drawers. Even under the mattress. Looking for any other clue. And I found it. It was a small plastic wrapper, folded into four, hidden behind the fake outlet in the wall. When I opened it, I found a small handwritten piece of paper. Tight letters, no margins. In English. It read, "Beauty without permission is violence. Order demands payment." The eyeliner wasn't the mistake. Your ease was the wound. My stomach twisted. I didn't understand. Not everything. But I started connecting the dots.
He wasn't angry about the object.
He was angry at the natural way I took it, for stepping into his sacred aesthetic, his identity, his form, as he called it. I stood up. I paced around the room like a caged animal. I needed air. I went out onto the street at 11 at night. Walking around Jaipur at night isn't easy, especially for a foreign woman. But I didn't care. I walked to the shop where he used to buy things. A small, nameless neighborhood shop with an elderly woman always behind the counter. "Do you remember Ravi?" I asked her. She looked at me with cloudy eyes. "The makeup boy?" I nodded. "What did he buy here?" She pulled out a notebook and showed it to me. There was his name.
Dates.
Items purchased. One of them, marked 3 times, was non-medical sindoor. "What is that?" She frowned. "It's red powder. Used on the forehead." He asked for it without turmeric, only with lead.
Lead.
Mercury. Toxins. It was like he was crafting his own formula for something that only existed in his mind. I came back trembling. I showered with cold water. I sat on the bed, soaked, without drying my hair. I stared at the mirror for minutes. I remembered when I applied that eyeliner. I remembered how beautiful I felt, how strong, and then how I started falling apart from within. And then I saw it, a word, written in black marker, under the edge of the mirror. So thin it looked like part of the frame. Only one word, repeat. I jumped up in shock. It wasn't a mistake. It was a design with patterns, like the ones I used to draw in my sketches. But this one was human, painful,
Precise.
and I had only been one more piece. There was something perversely elegant in everything Ravi had left behind, as if his absence wasn't absence, but part of a planned design. Nothing felt abrupt. Every written word, every missing object, every memory distorted by the poison was like another brushstroke in a portrait whose full shape wasn't visible yet. I became obsessed. I spent hours in front of the mirror where I found the word repeat. I cleaned it with alcohol, with hydrogen peroxide, even with a razor blade, but it never completely disappeared. As if it was embedded. As if it wasn't written on top, but beneath the glass, in a previous layer. I didn't eat properly. I didn't sleep more than 3 hours straight. I stopped attending classes. I felt dirty inside, as if something of his was still running through my blood. Something that didn't leave with his departure. But what really pushed me over the edge was that feeling that I wasn't the only one. One night, while going through old messages from months ago, I found a conversation with a former student of the program. Her name was Clara, French. She had returned to Lyon shortly before I arrived. I remembered she wrote to wish me luck in the residency and mentioned she had problems with her roommate, though she never elaborated. I messaged her. It was nearly 3 a.m. "Clara, sorry for the hour. I need to know who your roommate was in Jaipur." She took 15 minutes to respond. "Clara, why? Me? Because mine poisoned me. And I think it was the same guy." She didn't reply immediately. I stare at my phone like it was a bomb about to explode, until it vibrated. "Clara. Ravi. Very black hair, wore makeup, didn't talk much. Always carried a red notebook." My breath stopped. "Me. Did he do something to you?" "Clara. I could never prove it, but I was sick for 2 weeks. Never knew if it was him or not. I woke up with nosebleeds. Once I found my shampoo mixed with something white. They moved me to another room. No one believed me. Me. Did you keep anything?" "Clara. Yes. I took his notebook. Stole it before I left." I stood up so fast the dizziness made me stumble.
My heart was pounding out of my chest.
"Me. Can I see it? Can you send me photos?" 5 minutes passed. "Clara. You have to promise not to involve anyone. I don't want the press. I don't want the police. I don't want to go back to thinking it's my fault for what he did." "Me. I promise." Half an hour later, the first images arrived. It was a small notebook, hardcover, bright red. The pages were filled with symbols, diagrams, and phrases written in microscopic handwriting. There were drawings of eyes, lips, hands, faces deconstructed into geometric shapes. It reminded me of early sketches by designers obsessed with the golden ratio. But this wasn't art. It was something else, something painfully intimate. One page made me stop. It was divided into 3 sections. In each, a hand-drawn face, accompanied by a word. Resignation. Imitation. Theft. The last one had a small black stain where it looked like dry glue, as if something had been stuck there and was now gone. Clara messaged me at that moment. There was a photo of me there. I took it off and burned it. I gagged. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. My stomach twisted into knots. How many more? How many others had he classified, drawn, punished? Why was no one saying anything? I spent 2 days locked in a room, slept sporadically, woke up drenched. Every time I blinked, I saw the faces from the notebook behind my eyelids,
Until something happened that shook me.
I went to the shared kitchen for the first time in days. I was starving. My hands trembled as I spread butter on a piece of bread. I heard footsteps behind me. A new girl, dark-skinned, thin, short hair. "Are you Isabel?" she asked. I nodded without looking at her. "I'm Anya. They assigned me the room where your roommate, Ravi, I think, used to live." I felt my blood freeze. "You're sleeping in that room now?"
Yes.
"But there's something weird." I turned. "What thing?" "I found this," she said, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. It was a note written in the same tiny handwriting as the others. It read, "Every new form needs a guideline." My vision blurred. "Where did you find it?" "Stuck to the bed frame, on the side where you sleep." My throat burned. "Anya, please. You need to leave that room. You need to sleep somewhere else. Tonight." "You don't understand. She frowned. "He what?" "He plans things. Makes patterns. Punishes behaviors he deems wrong. You're not safe there." Anya didn't believe me. I saw it in her eyes. She said I was exaggerating, that it was probably a joke. She left, leaving her bread unfinished on the table. I ran back to my room. I checked every corner again. Under the bed, inside the pillow, behind the fake outlet. And there, folded in two, I found a thicker sheet. A black cardstock. When I opened it, I saw a design. It was a stylized human figure, with lines drawn across the eyes, the mouth, the forehead. There were arrows connecting words: aesthetic transgression, unconscious repetition, punitive recomposition. And at the very bottom, written in large, trembling letters, "Next, AA.
AA.
Anyatha Huja." My heart stopped for a second. I couldn't stay silent. I ran to the administration office. I demanded that Anjali listen to me. I showed her the notes. I showed her the photos from Clara's notebook. I showed her the pattern that mentioned Anya. She turned pale. Why would he do that? Because he thinks he's correcting. Because he sees a flaw in how we use image. Because I took his eyeliner. Clara used his mirror. And now Anya is in his space. It all makes sense to him. Twisted. But it makes sense. Where is he now? I don't know. But he hasn't really left. Anjali stared at me for a long while, then dialed a number and spoke in Hindi. I understood almost nothing. She hung up. "We're going to move you to another room.
Anya too.
But don't say anything yet. What if he's already watching?" She hesitated. "Then we have no choice but to catch him." That night, they moved me to another room on the upper floor. Small, with less light. I sat in front of the window, watching the street lit by orange lampposts. The city smelled like incense, moisture, and hot dust. I put on my headphones. I played the voice message Clara had sent me hours earlier. I got obsessed too, ISA. I wanted to know everything. But I swear, the more you understand, the more it hurts. Because he doesn't just play with poisons. He plays with meanings. He sees us as symbols. As design flaws. And the worst part is, I don't think he's working alone. The next day, I found something under the door. A white envelope, with no sender. Inside, a photograph. It was me, asleep, in the bed of my new room. On the back, a single word: continue. Sleeping after finding that photo was impossible. I lay down fully clothed, with the lights on, as if that could protect me. Every small sound from the ceiling made me whip my head around. Every shadow cast by the garden trees looked like human movement. I tried not to close my eyes for more than a few seconds. And when I did, I saw him, in his immaculate white shirt, with straight hair falling over an expressionless face. With that look I never quite learned to read. I woke up with dry eyes and a knotted stomach. Anjali had promised to increase campus security, but the guards I saw at the entrance could barely stay awake, and the camera pointing at the hallway looked disconnected. Nothing made me feel safe. Nothing. I thought about leaving. I really did. Booking a flight. Going home. Saying I tried, that I survived, that I shouldn't risk more. But every time that idea grew stronger, something tightened inside me. The same part of me that had endured the poisoning, the isolation, the guilt. The part that said, "You're not leaving until you understand why he did it." Because yes, I wanted justice. But more than that, I wanted to understand. The photograph I received had no watermark, no code, no metadata. I checked everything. Max helped me with image analysis software. The only thing we managed to determine was that it had been taken from a high angle, probably from the bathroom skylight that connected to my room. We went up. There was disturbed dust. A partial footprint. Very recent. "This isn't someone who left," Max said. "It's someone who never stopped being here." It didn't seem possible. Or so I thought, until we discovered that on campus, there was a locked room. A small technical space that had been out of use for months. Supposedly, no one slept there. No one had a key. But Max, who'd been in Jaipur longer than I had, knew that not everything the administration said was true. The door was at the end of a hallway by the laundry room. A metal sign read, "Do not use. Electrical leak." But the lock had recent marks. We unscrewed the knob with a Swiss Army knife. My heart was pounding. When we finally opened it, the smell hit me first. Stale damp. Cheap disinfectant. Rusty metal. And then I saw inside. It was an exact replica of our old room. Not identical in objects, but in structure. An old mattress against the wall. A yellow lamp like the one we had. A cracked mirror, hung with string. A metal box. And in one corner, a red notebook. My throat closed. "This can't be," Max whispered. "He was living here. This whole time." There were no photos. No food. Just the essentials. Wires, scissors, empty bottles of facial toner. Notes. Dozens. Taped to the walls. As if he'd been rehearsing. One read, "She's crossed the line. Test complete. New study unit. Reaction to guilt." Another, "Observe without interfering. Intervene without touching." And then one, written in black ink, more recent. "She resists. But she follows the pattern." I looked back at the metal box. It was like the one I had in my room. I hesitated a second, then opened it. Inside, there were only two things: a strand of my hair, tied with dental floss, and a napkin with lipstick, the same color I'd worn on presentation day in Delhi. He had taken everything. Everything. Every trace. I sat on the floor. I felt the tears coming, but they didn't fall. My body no longer had the capacity to cry. My conscience hurt more than my skin. He hadn't just poisoned me. He had dissected me. Turned me into his final project. Max and I debated what to do. Anjali insisted on keeping the matter quiet until they knew whether it was a real risk. A polite way of saying she didn't want a scandal in the middle of international exchange season. That disgusted me. That day, I went to the embassy, not to report anything, to ask. I wanted to know if Ravi had traveled before, if he was registered in any other similar program. A young man with a British accent, a local employee, attended me impatiently. But when I mentioned the name, his attitude changed. "Ravi Srivastava?" "Yes," he typed quickly. Frowned. Then looked at me. "You met him in Jaipur?" "Yes." "And is he okay?" "Why do you ask?" "Because there's an internal notification." He lowered his voice. "That name came up in connection with a disappearance in 2022. A design student in Pune. He left campus after living with him. No one ever saw him again." I felt dizzy. Was Ravi investigated? No. Nothing formal. The case was closed as a voluntary disappearance. The student had family issues. But I don't know. They haven't told me everything. It wasn't paranoia. It was a pattern. That night, I returned to campus with only one goal in mind: find him. I went back to the technical room. I checked every corner, every crack. And as I did, I felt something crunch beneath the wood. It was a crushed cardboard box. I carefully pulled it out. Inside, a list. Names. Dates. Places. All names of people who had been in contact with Ravi. Clara. Me. Anya. A girl named Priya. A boy with the last name Ramos. All with a date next to them. And a coded word. A. March. Beginning. IM. April. Break. CL. February. Repetition. Mine said IB. April. Correction. Successful. Successful. He had done it with me. I was just another line in his experiment. And then came the final twist. That same night, someone knocked on my door. Just once. It was Anya. Her face was pale. She was trembling. ISA. "I found this." She showed me a phone. Not hers. An old one. With only one app open. Image gallery. There, folders with dates. Photos of me. From impossible angles. Photos of Clara. Of Anya. Of Max. And a video. I pressed play. It was a recording from inside a room. Dark. With only one lamp on. A figure sitting in front of a table. You couldn't see their face. Only their hands. In one of them, they held a black eyeliner. And then, their voice. Clear. Precise. Like a command. Every intervention is a reversion. Every object takes shape in chaos. Today, we repeat. And they turned off the light. We called Anjali. We called the local police. But when we returned to the tech room, everything was gone. The red notebook. The notes. The box. Only the mirror remained. And written in eyeliner. "It wasn't me who watched you. It was you who looked too much."